You wake up and you're already behind. Not tired, you slept 8 hours. But something feels thick, like you're thinking through a wet cloth. You drive to your daughter's, walk in, and her neighbor, a woman you've known for 11 years, says hello. For 3 full seconds, you cannot locate her name. You smile, you cover it, but your daughter sees, and she gives you that look. Here's what I need you to understand right now. That moment wasn't caused by how long you slept. It was caused by how you were lying while you slept. And if no one has ever told you that, that's exactly why I'm here today. I'm Dr. Eleanor Vance. 32 years in clinical neurology, the last 12 focused almost entirely on one question. Why do intelligent, healthy adults over 50 start losing their cognitive edge when nothing in their standard blood work explains it? What most of my colleagues still aren't telling their patients is this. We have been giving completely wrong guidance about sleep. For decades, the advice has been, get your 7 to 8 hours, keep a consistent schedule, avoid screens before bed. And when it comes to position, sleep on your back. Better for your spine, better for your alignment. That is what practitioners still recommend today. And that specific piece of guidance is actively worsening something critical happening inside your brain every single night. A 2021 Harvard Health analysis confirmed that when sleep fails to complete a full cycle of neurotoxic protein clearance, even in people getting adequate hours, brain plaque accumulates measurably. The issue isn't how long you're sleeping. It's whether the brain's overnight drainage system can actually do its job. And the position your body holds while you sleep directly determines whether it can. This channel exists for one reason: to give you the clinical information your 15-minute appointment never has time for. The kind of knowledge that actually protects your independence, your memory, and your right to stay sharp on your own terms. If that's what you came here for, hit subscribe. Not for me, but for the version of yourself you're still fighting to be. And if that foggy, disorienting morning I just described felt uncomfortably familiar, type the word drain in the comments right now. Because that is exactly what is failing inside your brain overnight. And by the end of this video, you'll understand precisely why. Here is what neuroscience has understood for over a decade, and what almost no one is translating into practical advice for patients. Your brain has no lymphatic system the way the rest of your body does. Instead, it has what researchers call the glymphatic system, a network of microscopic channels running alongside your blood vessels that flushes toxic metabolic waste out of brain tissue during sleep. It is almost entirely inactive while you're awake. It powers on when you sleep, and its efficiency is dramatically affected by one thing most people have never been told to consider: the angle of your body. Think of it like a drain in the floor of an old building. When the floor is level, water flows toward the drain, clears, and the floor stays clean. Tilt the floor, even slightly, and the water pools away from the opening. The drain doesn't fail, the geometry does. Sleep on your back or your stomach, and you are effectively tilting that geometry against the brain's drainage direction. The channels narrow, the flow drops, and the toxic proteins that should have been cleared overnight, specifically tau and beta amyloid, the two compounds most directly linked to memory and cognitive decline, don't make it out. Night after night, they accumulate. They don't sit there passively. They create a kind of neurochemical noise, interference that sits between your brain and its own stored memories. The word you're reaching for is still in there. The name is still in there. But the signal cannot get through the static. A 2023 study published in Molecules identified a compound isolated from tamarind that showed direct, measurable reductions in tau protein and beta amyloid levels, alongside improvements in spatial memory in research models. The mechanism is addressable. The buildup is not permanent. But nothing changes until the interference is actually cleared. I want to speak directly to what you've already tried, because I see the same pattern in nearly every patient who sits across from me. Positional pillows, wedge pillows, orthopedic bolsters, the ones recommended for reflux or back pain, those address spinal mechanics. They do nothing for lymphatic flow direction. They solve the wrong problem entirely. Melatonin can adjust when you fall asleep, but it doesn't repair a clearance failure that's been building for years. And sleep trackers will show you your REM percentages, your deep sleep minutes, your oxygen saturation. But they don't measure the thing that is actually failing, the flow, not the stage. And if you've also tried a general brain supplement from the pharmacy shelf, those formulas are designed to add inputs, more B vitamins, more antioxidants, more stimulation. They never address the specific toxic residue already sitting in the neural pathways. You cannot hear a broadcast clearly by turning up the volume on a clogged receiver. The static has to be cleared first. You were not weak for trying those things. You were handed the wrong tools and told they were the right ones. Let me tell you what actually happens when the root of this problem is properly addressed. Day 1. Nothing dramatic, and that's intentional. The brain's drainage channels, long constricted by accumulated oxidative stress and protein residue, begin to relax. Inflammation that has been quietly limiting their diameter starts to ease. You might notice your mornings feel fractionally less weighted. Not clarity, not yet. Just the very first thinning of the fog. But I want to pause here and be direct with you. This only works if what you're giving your brain actually targets the specific biological failures driving the interference, not a general formula. The wrong intervention produces nothing because it never touches the actual mechanism. Day 3. You're at the kitchen table with your daughter. She mentions someone from a few years back, a name you've been reaching for and missing for months. And it surfaces, cleanly, without effort. But what my patients describe most vividly isn't the recall itself. It's what doesn't happen first. The familiar tightening in the chest, the split second of private terror they've learned to hide every time a conversation reaches for a name or a word, simply doesn't arrive. They reach for it. It comes. And they sit there for a moment, quietly astonished at the absence of the dread they'd stopped expecting to live without. Day 2. What was happening behind the scenes? That breakthrough on day 3 was made possible by something completely invisible on day 2. Cellular autophagy, the brain's own cleanup process, had begun to accelerate. Tau protein levels that had been sitting in the neural pathways were starting to break down. The brain's antioxidant defense pathways were activating, scavenging reactive oxygen species that had been quietly oxidizing brain tissue for months. And critically, nerve growth factor synthesis, the biological signal that tells the brain to maintain and rebuild its neural connections, was beginning to recover. You couldn't feel any of that, but that invisible machinery was everything. It was the reason day 3 was possible. Day 5. Something shifts socially. Your son stops mid-sentence while you're talking and just looks at you differently. You finished a thought that would have stuttered a week ago, and you both know it without saying it. The quiet fear that has been attached to every conversation, every family gathering, every public moment where recall was required, it starts to lift. You realize you stopped bracing before you spoke. The dread of being seen as someone who needs to be managed, someone whose car keys are next, it starts to feel less like an approaching certainty and more like something you've stepped back from. Day 7. Patients consistently struggle to put this into words. They don't say they feel smarter. They don't say their memory is suddenly perfect. They say they feel like themselves. Not a new version, the original one. Sharp, present, and no longer spending quiet energy holding a cover story together in every room they walk into. After 32 years in neurology, I am deeply skeptical of anything marketed for brain health. The category is cluttered with products that address none of the specific failures I've just walked you through. So when I evaluate anything, for myself or for a patient, there are 4 things it must do. Not 2, not 3, all 4. First, it must actively stimulate nerve growth factor synthesis. Not support it in vague marketing language. Stimulate it specifically. NGF is how the brain rebuilds the connections that months or years of neurochemical interference have degraded. Second, it must target oxidative stress at the neurological level, scavenging the reactive oxygen species that have been oxidizing neural tissue. General antioxidants don't do this with enough precision or bioavailability to reach the brain in meaningful concentrations. Third, it must directly reduce tau and beta amyloid accumulation, not just slow future buildup, but clear what is already sitting in the pathways. That distinction is the entire difference between a formula that works and one that doesn't. Fourth, it must actually absorb into the brain. Most capsules dissolve in the stomach and lose a significant portion of their potency before anything reaches neural tissue. Delivery mechanism is not a secondary consideration. It is half of whether any of this matters at all. Very few formulas meet all 4. Most meet 1 at best. NeuroPrime is the formula I found that meets all 4. It's not a capsule, it's a liquid drop, and that distinction matters for exactly the reason I just described. 9 ingredients, each targeting a specific failure point in the mechanism we've covered, including lion's mane for nerve growth factor synthesis, and the tamarind isolate linked to the tau and beta amyloid research I referenced in section 4. I'm not going to walk through every ingredient here. There is a page linked below this video where the full science behind this formula is laid out, sourced, referenced, and explained more thoroughly than I have time for in the minutes I have left. If what I've described today maps onto what you've been experiencing, that is the next thing I would read. 1 drop, under your tongue or stirred into your morning coffee or tea. 10 seconds. That's the complete routine. No dietary overhaul, no daily protocol, no complicated regimen layered on top of everything else you're already managing. Most people notice a subtle shift in morning cognition within the first week. Not a dramatic snap, just a thinning of the fog. Full, sustained results typically settle in over 30 to 60 days of consistent use. Don't expect anything dramatic on day 1. Expect something real by day 30. And if it doesn't deliver what I've described, there is a 365-day money-back guarantee. Full refund. Return whatever you have left, used or unused, no conversation required. The financial risk of trying it is effectively 0. The cost of not trying it is something only you can calculate. Before you close this video, I want you to do one thing. Type the word myself in the comments. Not for the algorithm, because choosing to protect your sharpness, to remain the person you know yourself to be, is a decision you make on purpose. Mark this as the moment you made it. And if someone in your life has been quietly covering for pauses and lost words, a parent, a spouse, a friend who laughs it off, but you can see the fear behind it, share this video with them. Not as a hint, as something you care enough to pass along. Tonight, the position you choose could be the most important health decision you make this week. Choose well. I'll see you in the next one.